Today I'm going to try to recreate another one of my favorite guitar sounds ever recorded, Robert Fripp's lead parts on David Bowie's Heroes. Bowie's Berlin Trilogy records are some of my favorite albums of all time, and definitely some of the most influential on me as a producer and a musician. Heroes is kind of the classic track from that era, and the way Tony Visconti and Brian Eno recorded Robert Fripp's guitar on this song is just so creative and unique, and I really wanted to see if I might be able to emulate that with pedals. There's an amazing video of Tony Visconti opening up the master tapes and kind of going through the song track by track and explaining how everything was recorded. If you're into production like I am, it's absolutely worth a watch, so I'll link to the full video below.
Okay.
Basically, there are 3 of Robert Fripp's guitars going throughout the whole song.
So we have this, we have this. See, he came in later there. Different sound. And we have this track, 3 tracks.
They're all kind of centered around this technique of manipulating feedback.
But he had this lovely idea and was playing with his feedback control by stepping on his measured distances between the note he was playing and where the speaker was.
So let's go through each of these 3 tracks one by one. So for this setup, I'm using the Halberd from Electronic Audio Experiments as my overdrive. I have that going into the Mercury 7 from Meris in plate mode, kind of on a shorter, roomier setting. One thing I noticed in this video is that the guitar parts sound a little bit less reverby than they appear on the track, and I think that's probably because in mixing they were using outboard reverb. So to emulate that, I have one side of the Mercury 7 going straight into the amp, and then the other side going into the Boss RV2 for a longer, airier reverb that's going straight into the interface. Panning that second reverb a little bit wider gives a cool added depth in the stereo field. Then to jump back to the beginning of the chain, I'm using the Digitech FreqOut, which is a feedback generator, and I'm using that obviously to emulate the feedback that Fripp is getting by moving around in front of the amp. So here's what that sounds like all put together. The next part is a part that I never really picked out in the recording until I saw this video. It's just kind of this pretty lead playing from Fripp, and in the album version it's fairly buried, but it really does add something. The setup for this part is the same as the first part, just using slightly different settings on a couple things. Now onto the last part. This part was easily the hardest to recreate. I'll let Tony Visconti explain what's going on.
Here we go. Brian Eno can take things into his synthesizer and manipulate them. That's a treated guitar, and that's something that he and Fripp worked on some previous albums. So you have Fripp moving back and forth, playing this part, and you have Eno going like this with the little synthesizer and doing this and all that. It's no ordinary guitar sound, and I know you can't buy a pedal like that'll sound like that. That's done by 2 very smart people.
As Visconti says, they don't make a pedal that does this. This part definitely has a raspier feel, and then there's also that kind of grating, almost mechanical kind of sound, which of course is coming from Brian Eno's EMS suitcase synth, and I don't have one of those. I tried a handful of different options to recreate this sound, so I'll walk you through what I ended up landing on. I swapped out the overdrive for a fuzz. As I said, this kind of has a raspier feel to it, and I thought the Sputnik 3 from Spaceman did a good job of kind of getting the overall vibe a little bit closer. Then I'm using the Meris Enzo. I kind of thought, well, if they accomplish a sound by running a guitar through a synth, the Enzo is a synth pedal, so maybe there's something in here that I can use. I ended up running this in dry mode, so there's no synth emulation, I'm just using the effects processing. All I'm really using here is some compression and the ring mod to bring out those harsh overtones. I'm using the same reverb setup, and of course I'm also using the FreqOut. There's this part in the intro where there's this really awesome squealy, high-pitched feedback that comes through. So while I was recording, I switched the setting on the FreqOut halfway through that phrase. So that is all three parts. I'm going to play them all together, isolated, and let you hear that. And now I will turn on the backing track that I made for this and let you hear the finished product. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you aren't subscribed to the channel already, it would mean a lot if you did. I do a lot of pedal demos, and I definitely want to do more of these recreations in the future. So thanks again.